What I was telling, that this important event, business meet, has always been a very important part of our alumni meet. And this year we have chosen as topic challenges in implementation of NEP 2020, National Education Policy 2020, the much talked about, the much discussed, the much debated policy. Uh, and the focus of that discussion would be engineering education. So, challenges and implementation of NEP 2020 in engineering education. Without any further fuss and noise, I invite Dr. Biman Ghosh, 1981 metallurgy, to kindly conduct the event. Bimanda.
Thank you, Indro. And first of all, it's my apology that I am on the clock, actually probably 15 minutes behind. Thanks, Amitavo. So our institute was founded back in 1856. And as we all know, our alumni have laid the engineering foundation of British India. We introduced postgraduate and doctoral programs and faculty exchange program with universities abroad. And at the dawn of this century, and in view of the technological transformation in the horizon, our constituents conceived the need to repositioning BE College as a research-intensive institute under the brand of Institute of National Importance. This was a 10+ years long, consistent and concerted effort of our faculty members, we the alumni, the students of the institute, and the administration, that resulted in the formation of IIEST as a new brand of research intensive institute back in March 2014. GAABESU, or Global Alumni Association of Bengal Engineering and Student Science University, is the only alumni association of our alma mater. And we fought hand in hand with all entities, including the Teachers Association, students' bodies, etc., and pursued at different levels to bring this vision to fruition and make IIEST possible. Since inception, the Institute has been meticulously pursuing the transformation of structural and regulatory framework, and that is in consistence with the INI, or Institute of National Importance Systems. And now IIEST is poised to build up the infrastructural and academic framework envisioned by the Ananda Krishnan Committee in the detailed project report, or as we know, DPR of IIEST. It's encouraging that the insight of that DPR is largely in agreement with the basic principle of multidisciplinary education and research university, MERU, as depicted in National Education Policy 2020. The challenge in the horizon is accommodating the well-founded brand of engineering institutes and pedagogical system established therein within the NEP framework. As we all know, Indian engineering education is well known in the global arena, and we established a decades-old brand identity in terms of structural stability and quality of our output. Since engineering education is directly linked with the overall economic growth of the country, it is the call of the hour for our stakeholders to identify the challenges in implementation of NEP 2020 for engineering education by developing the appropriate mechanism and incorporating associated changes based on our inherent strengths and through backward-forward linkages. GAABESU has decided to discuss the policy changes in implementing NEP 2020 in engineering education and has invited a panel of prominent educationists and policymakers to examine the pros and cons of the proposed policy. We hope to get their perspective on NEP, which may help IIST administration in charting a path for excellence. As you know that we have a very distinguished panelist. I'm not going to describe their biodata because each of their biodata could be like consuming the whole length of this panel discussion. So without further ado, I'll hand over the microphone to Professor Indranil Manna, our own Indranil, 1983 graduate from BE College Metallurgy Department. Later on, he became the director of IIT Kanpur. He became the director of CGCRI. Now he's the vice chancellor of BIT Mishra. And I see that he grew up with his precision as he used to make a cover drive on a cricket pitch. So now our own Indranil Manna is the president-elect of the Indian National Academy of Engineering. He's the first decorated alumnus of our institute who is going to take that coveted chair with effect from January 1st. So with all that, our beloved Professor Manna, please take the stage, and I invite all our distinguished panelists to be on the dais. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh, and good evening, all the faculty members, staff, students, and scholars of IST Shibpur, dear alumni of B College, GAABESU, and IIST of today, ladies and gentlemen, and friends. You, of course, by now would have understood the importance of this particular event and why national education policy is so important, not just for India. If I may quote just a few data points, 1.32 billion people, the second most populous state in the whole world, third largest and fourth largest GDP in terms of PPP and nominal measures, over 5,000 years of recorded history, one of the oldest human civilization. But the most important reason why NEP 2020 should make ripples not only within India, but even throughout the globe, is because of the fact that over 800 million people in India are below the age of 35. And NEP desires to make 100% gross enrollment ratio by 2030, another 10 years at the secondary level, and at least 50% at the higher education level. So for the global village, this huge population, which are going to get educated not only at the secondary, but even at higher education level, should make a difference to the whole world as a knowledge economy. So welcome to this panel discussion. And on my personal behalf, I would also like to, at the very outset, record my gratitude to all the panelists who you already are aware are extremely eminent by their own rights. National education policy is basically based on three main planks: highest form of education, encouragement, and enlightenment. The vision proclaims that India should transform. The NEP should transform India towards a knowledge society by providing a very high quality education and make India a global knowledge partner. The policy wants to make every single citizen of the country as being proud Indian, and also at the same time make them global citizens and useful to the rest of the world. The policy is no longer a projection, it is already a reality. 29th of July, the Union Cabinet approved it. The policy has 4 major chapters, 4 major parts, and 27 chapters, the last one being on implementation. And that's exactly what we are going to discuss today. Though the discussion is centered on higher education, and that too technological education, the foundation cannot be ignored. The fundamental difference is, until recently, India always pursued a 10+2 form of education, which is 10 years followed 10 years of elementary plus secondary, followed by 2 years of higher education. And the new policy now is going to talk about a change in terms of this basic structure of 5+3+3+4, taking into account the importance of foundational stage of education. There are many important features which the panelists, of course, will share with you. Some of these I have highlighted here. There is a very ambitious and aspirational element, but grounded in reality. The policy promises to give universal access to the entire population for higher education. There are rooms for vocational training, even teacher training. It says research is very, very essential for quality teaching, and higher education. The research should be of all categories of pure, applied, translational, and fundamental. The policy proposes to phase out the non-performing institutions gradually. The government, private, deemed universities, all are supposed to have equal stake. The courses should be multidisciplinary. The focus now should shift from pure teaching to more of learning. The strict compartments of science, humanities, commerce should be gradually removed. The policy should promote job creation rather than job seeking. The entrance process probably one day will be a common for the whole country. The most important thing is the education should actually percolate to the entire population. So the main focus is education for all. While the policy invites foreign direct investment for university level education, for a change, the policy also desires Indian universities to open the campus in foreign countries. So what are the new things? Importance of research, possibilities of lateral entry and exit multiple times, academic credit bank, something like savings bank that all of us we have. Age should not be a barrier. There are many new concepts which would be introduced, including the one on entrance through an open common entrance examination for the entire population. The policy promises graded autonomy to the Board of Governors, more on academic matters than on financial. Accreditation will be very strictly evaluated and assessed. The policy says the education will have to be multidisciplinary with various possibilities of lateral entry at various stages. Online courses and digital platform will be a key component of education. The policy encourages to go global and embrace foreign component both in India and make Indian education go global. There is also a very major promise of going up to 6% of the India's 3 trillion GDP, which amounts to more than 1 lakh crore in Indian rupees. Another very significant new is the proposal to create a national research foundation with about 0.1% of the GDP outlay in that. Something similar to the National Science Foundation of USA. One single umbrella that will cover the entire research gamut of the country. So with this background, without any further elaboration on NEP, we all are aware this is very important. And as I told you, you already are aware. I'm sure you are very much eager to listen to the very eminent panelists. And I'll go one by one and pose a few important questions. And at the end, hopefully we should be able to come back and take a few more. So the very first question is to Dr. Suresh, not because he was director of VSSC or president of Indian National Academy of Engineering, but because he's now heading as Chancellor, Indian Institute of Space Technology, a very key technology area for the country and possibly even for various developing nations in the world. So Dr. Suresh, it's now my privilege to ask you that we all know NEP is new and everybody is trying to grasp and assimilate. So, but what is truly new and novel about NEP? And how do you think NEP can actually make a very crucial impact in the overall technology development in India in the near future? So Dr. Suresh, would you please first react?
Thank you, Professor Manna. Professor Manna and distinguished co-panelists and all participants. First of all, I consider it an honor to be part of this august occasion and thank the organizers and particularly Professor Manna for an opportunity to participate in this important panel discussion. The question that you have asked has two parts. One is what is truly new and novel about NEP? And of course, the second is its impact on technology development in India. As you have already highlighted, there are several policy initiatives. But for want of time, I would like to concentrate on a few which, in my opinion, are very. The most distinctive feature of this policy is laying emphasis on the holistic and multidisciplinary education. In fact, in the words of Dr. K. Kasturirangan, who headed this NEP, he says that it would have been easier to come up with a short-sighted policy simply which calls for improved job readiness in day one. But he further says that such an opportunity is dangerously out of step with a world which is really rapidly changing. Therefore, they have made a very strong recommendation that students must be given much broader multidisciplinary foundation so that they can adopt and reinvent as necessary over their entire working life. I think it's a very, very important recommendation. The second aspect I would like to touch upon, which is very extremely important, is they stress on lifelong learning, strengthening open and distance learning and vocational education. They're stressing this fact because I think all of us know that the technologies are advancing, and today we see quite a few the advanced technologies coming in like AI, augmented reality, machine learning, and many other things. And once you have these kind of advanced technologies, they demand increasing skills in our students to meet the hybrid jobs. So that's why they stress that the vocational skills have to be imported in the engineering education, which also will complement capabilities of higher technology equipment. So that is important. Therefore, education system should address to prepare them to meet the demands of such hybrid jobs. Of course, one more area that they have really stressed is always we know that affiliated institutions have to transform themselves as an autonomous institution to improve the education. So they go, this is already on, but then they go a step further and then they provide an excellent framework. Not only they provide a framework, it is backed by a very good accreditation method. I think as already you have mentioned, how do we achieve the autonomy in the higher education? In my opinion, this is one of the important aspects that we should look for. Then of course, the next one that they touch as a newly and novel recommendation is how do we revamp the regulating structure? You know, this is one of the essential ingredients in the education. They address the key challenges with the present systems of multiple regulatory bodies, as well the conflicting demands which are there. So they have come out with a very nice way of revamping the regulation structure. In my opinion, this will go in a big way to improve the NEP and education in engineering particularly. Of course, the next one is that we all know that research takes the prominent place in engineering education. Towards that, what they have done is they have recommended creation of a National Research Foundation, which you also touched upon. The whole objective is here to improve the efficiency in identifying the critical broader research areas. So not only that, they also go further to say that we have to enhance and ensure funds availability to much wider set of institutions on merit basis. I think this is extremely important. And they further go and then they sort of recommend strongly to setting up National Education Technology Forum. I think this is where we can leverage the technologies that are available to improve the quality and accessibility of higher education, particularly engineering education. The idea here is to provide evidence-based assessment of technology interventions while promoting research and entrepreneurship. That will happen. Now let me come quickly on the impact of crucial technologies that are contributing for the development in India. You know, there are three parts. We can go on and on, but I will restrict myself to three important areas. One is, which is immediate, second is midterm, and third is long term. If you take the immediate, the National Research Foundation, which has been recommended, I think will go in a long way in identifying the crucial and critical areas for research and development efforts. And how do we really identify them, give them the direction so that the activity can get started. This has to happen very soon. And if it happens all over India, I think this will make a very big impact on crucial technologies development. I think it's the need of the hour. The second midterm, if I can say so, as you said, they have several chapters. There is a key section which deals with the disruptive technologies, which already I mentioned. So what is important is, I think we need to gear ourselves to identify ways in which large number of students, they can be skilled in these emerging domains. I think unless we don't marry the available technologies and the skills, we will not be able to progress. If we do, it will again have a very big impact on critical technologies. I think we'll progress forward. The long term, I think they have really addressed from beginning to end, and they want to percolate the various initiatives they have done. They have linked it very nicely from school education. What they have told is that the seeds are to be sown at school level itself for innovative technology development. I think it's an excellent recommendation because this suggests significant changes in school system, but at the same time aligning with the existing students' natural development. Of course, they stress upon replacing the traditional rote-based curriculum with fresh ideas to promote higher order thinking and creativity, without which I don't think we'll be able to make much progress. If we do these things, I'm sure that this will not only help in impacting the crucial technology development in India, but also it will bring greater contribution towards output on technology innovation. Innovation is the key. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suresh. As usual, you have very cogently brought out perhaps the most important point that you mentioned, as most of the learned people always remind us that for education, if teaching is one side of the coin, the other side must be research. And NEP does stress on research. You are right, it does stress on merit. It talks about National Educational Technology Forum. And also the other part, what you said is very right, that NRF, when it comes to reality, nobody knows, but the policy should promote the skilling of India and continuous curriculum revision. So thank you again, Dr. Suresh. And now it's my privilege to go over to Dr. Srikumar Banerjee. Dr. Banerjee, everyone is aware, probably one of the finest material scientists and engineer produced in this country. He steered Atomic Energy Commission. He was at the helm for very many years for steering one of the most important strategic sector of this country. But apart from his scientific contributions, Dr. Banerjee has been a distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, Chairman Board of Governors of IIT Kharagpur, and presently Chancellor of two major universities in the country, including Atomic Energy's own creation, Homi Bhabha Research Institute. So Dr. Banerjee, on behalf of the alumni, we would like to ask you that the Prime Minister has made a very clarion call that India should sooner than later emerge as Atmanirbhar, self-reliant. Do you see that NEP is going to help India reach that coveted goal? And do you think that NEP can truly promote the culture of translational research? We publish, but what happens of that knowledge afterwards? Can we convert that into a technology? So Dr. Banerjee, your views, please. Dr. Banerjee, kindly unmute and start.
Yes. Okay, Professor Manna, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. I was also present during the inaugural part of this Alumni Association, and it was really very encouraging from the words of the director who expressed his the difficult phase through which the country is going, and also running an institute under this condition, and to maintain the kind of a right educational standard. Now, the first question that you have raised is that what about the Atmanirbhar or self-reliance? You see, the concept of self-reliance is not new. India, right after the independence, took the step that India has to be self-reliant. And in few areas which were clearly identified as areas where we have to have the complete self-reliance, wherein areas like in atomic energy or in space. And you can see, not only that, you have many other areas, like even in steel or fertilizers. These are the areas which were, right from the beginning, were identified that India must be self-reliant on such areas. And see the result today. The result is, yes, in very complex technologies, like in atomic energy or in space, we are definitely self-reliant. You take the case of steel, the way it is now expanding, India is self-reliant. Maybe there are some imports, but it's quite possible for India to be 100% self-reliant. Also can be the major supplier of at least the common steel items to the whole world. Come to the fertilizer, again you'll find that India is self-reliant. But you look around your home, look at your television set, look at your refrigerator, look at your computer you're using. None of these we are self-reliant. So it's a pity that in day-to-day things that we use today, we are very much dependent on external sources. Sometimes even the manufacturing is done in India, but it's a screwdriver technology. We are not really self-reliant in technology. This is a very sad situation. And in my childhood days, I have seen the refrigerator at home was an Indian-made Surfridge. Today, you don't hear of Surfridge. Today, you don't hear of Electrolux, one refrigerator company. The first television that I bought was from Electronic Corporation of India. It was Indian. Today, there's not a single Indian brand. So where are we missing out? And this is where you have to see that unless you think of a total technology, you can't be self-reliant. And the growth of total technology comprehensively is something which the higher education institutes can really do. I'll again give an example. Say today we have a tremendous growth in our solar energy program. Tremendous. I think it was unprecedented. Nobody could even visualize that this kind of a growth can be there in solar energy. You know how much of silicon we produce in the country? It is still, I think the number is 0. So you think of a growth of solar energy, but without having the basic input of making silicon. And it is not that India was not wanting in this technology. I remember even in 60s, there was complete technology available of making silicon. We haven't done that investment or that growth thinking that, oh, solar energy is far off. So there has been problems of this kind, and we try to find out easy solution by the way of import. So I think it is necessary for the higher educational institution, and that is where NEP can help, that NEP can help to make us Atmanirbhar or self-reliant. What's the real obstacle? The real obstacle is not in the policy, but in implementation. You know, one of the biggest problems in the academic environment is to identify that total technology development. Everybody is working on an area which maybe is niche area for himself or his own group, but that does not lead to a final product which comes to the market or which becomes a useful thing for the humanity. So this is where we are lacking, and how to break that. Breaking that would require essentially one important point, that is we have to collaborate. It is impossible in the present structure, a university professor and around him a few students will do everything for making a total technology. It's not possible. But if we take the strength of a given institute or even multi-institutional projects where we can bring it to the level that we have the comprehensive technology development, then only will become Atmanirbhar. And that is what is indicated in the NEP, not so categorically, but I'm sure that we must think of such an approach that we must collaborate, we must synergize the strengths of multiple research groups to finally achieve self-reliance in given area. I'm just giving an example again of the same refrigerator you take. Is it not possible for Indian universities or higher educational institutions, particularly engineering institutions to think of these kind of white goods as one of the identified research development. It is not very easy. We see that, oh, this is something well-beaten track. Why should I work on that? But it's not a well-beaten track. The thing is that there's a continuous improvement. See, today, you may find that you don't need a refrigerant of that, but you can go to a completely different way of making, see, using rare earth, it is possible to do refrigeration in a completely different way. And this will be essentially what we call the disruptive technology. So there are avenues of doing even fundamental work leading to this kind of development, which will change the scenario, and India can become totally Atmanirbhar. Now, this translational of knowledge to technology. You see, we always think these days we are very often using the word, the technology readiness level, TRLs. And everybody writes a project and gives a number of the TRL that you will be promoting. You'll be coming to the number 5, 6, 7, like that. But we really don't understand what is the meant of a technology readiness level. More than technology readiness level, I think we have to go further to think of investment readiness level. If we do something robust enough, which will stand the competition, the international competition, and make it an object which will stand international competition in the market, it has to be only then a technology. It's not just technology readiness level, but it's an investment readiness. Somebody can invest on that and can make a profit to sustain. Profit is not just for profit making, to sustain that activity. So we have to come from that stage. NEP has to promote the culture of translation of knowledge to technology, finally withstands the competition in the market. And if we are unable to do that, whatever we may say that, oh, there's a great technology development in a given research activity, it is not enough. And this is where, again, you see that the embargo which was placed for atomic energy or space has made us learn that we have to make the total technology and make it a success. And today we can claim that, yes, the atomic energy or the space have shown that we can not only make the technology, we make it competitive internationally. And that's it, very important. I think I also take 1 or 2 points from Professor Dr. Suresh, because he gave that important point on, first of all, the holistic education. You see, I mean, both in Professor Suresh's space university as well as in our Homi Bhabha National Institute, the issue is that education is not, getting a degree is not the finish of education. Getting a degree is a start of your education. So one has to continuously learn. So the process of learning, what we really learn in a university is not what we capture that and spend the whole career with that knowledge, but we learn how to learn. And if this learning how to learn is something which has to be given by the university to us, and that is very strongly promoted in NEP, that we must learn the skill of learning more and continue to learn. And there should be enough of opportunity for that process, that we continue to learn and can become always at the frontier of technology. And then only we'll be able to make it Atmanirbhar. Otherwise, by the time we learn and start doing something, it is the technology is already obsolete. So it's no way we can match up with the world in such a situation. So I think there are basic elements in NEP which are very important. They have also given the emphasis on Atmanirbhar, that on the issue of holistic education. You see, it is very, just a few days back, we celebrated the centenary year of Vishwabharati. So imagine 100 years back, this concept of holistic education was introduced, 100 years back. And it was always considered that creativity is not just defined in your own domain of activity, but one has to have a creativity across. And so one can be a good engineer at the same time can have some performing artist. So this kind of a thing must be there in the career development. And that again has been highlighted in the NEP, which I very much, but unfortunately, we haven't given this kind of a importance to our existing universities like in Vishwabharati, where this was initiated 100 years back. So only last point that I want to mention is that a little attitude difference will also be necessary. Attitude change from the part of the educationists, both teachers and as also the students, because we have to see that it's not just not a career making. Education is not only for making a career. It's something more than that. Is it that as a human being, with that education, you can contribute something which can better the lives of other human beings? If that element is not induced in us, it is not possible really to become neither Atmanirbhar nor what for we have come? What for? I mean, we spend our 40 years of career, we spend about 20 years of our education. What for are all these? And this is what is a very important question. It's not just for the kind of a glory that we get in our career or that success in career, but something more than that. And this also was very much emphasized in this holistic education, which even Tagore has mentioned. I can say something in Bengali because I saw that most of you are during the inaugural part, many people were talking in Bengali. So while I was thinking about it this morning, I just remembered a song of Tagore where he says, Esho ki heta Joshero Kangali, Kotha gethe gethe nite korutali. In fact, I was writing a paper at that time. So writing a scientific paper is also Kotha gethe gethe nite korutali. Ke koribe kaj, ke ghuchate chai jononiro laj. If you take this, just this spirit, it's not just a glorification in academics that we think of your success. Success is that, is it not possible to do a little bit of work which also helps the humanity at large and our country particularly? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Banerjee. In research, we often say that a problem well-defined is a problem half done. So you actually rightly defined the scope of this slogan of self-reliance. And what it requires is not just investment of money, but also investment of time. One needs to be patient to be able to sustain the momentum. But you also pointed out that the devil lies not in the policy, but actually in its implementation. And you also made a very important point that collaboration should be the key if we really want to care for translating knowledge into technology. And you gave a number of examples as to where we started, but we couldn't actually hold the steam. So enough food for thought. Thank you again, Dr. Banerjee. And this allows me now to invite Mrs. Amita Sharma. 2014, when the NDA government came to power, there were a series of new initiatives launched by the then Ministry of Human Resource Development. Science and Heritage Initiative, Unnat Bharat Abhiyan, RUSA, UAY, and so many. In my opinion, one of the biggest one was impacting research, innovation, and technology, imprint. All these initiatives were steered as the then additional secretary of MHRD, none other than Mrs. Amita Sharma. In fact, I remember her saying that budget allocation and other things, when it comes to the higher education institution, Mrs. Sharma would boldly declare that this is my money and I'm going to spend it on higher education and higher technical education. Such was her spirit. So we are very, very privileged to have you, madam. And we have a long list of questions before you because we consider you to be extremely knowledgeable about the higher education space in the country, particularly in the technological education. The question that we would like to pose is, how will this pyramidal structure be realized? Unless we have a strong foundation, we cannot sustain. We want to reach 100% GR in the country within 10 years in the school level and 50% at the tertiary level. How is that going to be possible? And can we really ensure functional autonomy to all the higher education institutions through NEP? How will we implement this, and how soon can we realize the fruits? So a basket of questions, but I know you can handle them well. Over to you, Mrs. Sharma.
Well, first of all, thank you for making me part of this event, because I am not an alumnus. I am actually not even an engineer by training. I am a good old-fashioned English literature, and so I really don't see my role in this very eminent galaxy of educationists. And I'm also a retired bureaucrat. So I really think I'm very obsolete and have very little to offer, and I'm here more to learn. And just at the beginning, I'd like to say that the fact that we have such an eminent institution with such eminent educationists, and I'm really in awe of quite a lot of you. I've heard you all in different fora, and it's very difficult for me to say anything at all here. I mean, I'm scared. It's like a uneducated student in front of very eminent professors. I'm like very tongue-tied here. So please bear with me as I falter. That is to start with. And okay, I will, Professor Manan, now try to answer your questions, because I don't think a policy seeks to answer questions. A policy really seeks to provoke questions and to, it's somewhere in between, you know, looking back and then looking forward. And that's in a very tentative twilight zones. Mostly policies remain that. So to expect any policy to come up with a categorical answer to questions will be very difficult. But let's look at the kind of concerns a policy has. And I think here, first of all, when you talk about the pyramidal structure of the NEP for 100-person school, well, pyramidal structures is the nature of education itself, because there is a learning progression. So there is a certain hierarchy of in the way you organize curricula or learning objectives. But there's just one thing I like to say here is that in the diagram you showed, where now the new policy states that it's going in for a change from 10 plus 2 into 3 plus 2, and then, I know it says 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. But actually, what it also says is this is just a way of actually organizing curricula. This significant difference there is that it brings in ECE, early childhood care, as an integral part of a schooling system. And I think that's a huge, that's a very important and significant difference. I say that also because I was a deputy secretary and a member secretary to the Committee on Early Childhood Care way back in late 80s, when the policy was being reviewed and revised. And there was a big debate on where do you put early childhood education. And now it has taken so many years, and it's very solidly now been seen as an integral part of whole school education. So I think that is one significant difference that will lay better foundation for cognitive development, and also research shows that. But for the rest of this, the pyramidal structure, it remains pretty much the same, because you have class 1 to 2, and then 3 to 5. Then you have the upper primary, and then you have the high school. So there's not much difference in the way the school system has been organized in the education. How do you, so realizing that, when you say how do you realize it, well, it's not very clear to me. The problem in realizing it is not that there is any significant institutional change there. Much it has really depend on how, as a policy says, the curriculum is revisited. How do you reorganize the curriculum so that the curriculum is
Well, could I request everybody to kindly be muted other than the one who is speaking, please? Mrs. Sharma, please go on.
Yeah, so as the policy states, the task there in realizing the pyramidal structure will really depend a lot on how the curriculum is reviewed and reorganized or revisited. So that's a task for the realization of the pyramidal structure. Otherwise, in terms of institutional organization, other than bringing in the early childhood care as part of the schooling system, there is no other difference therein. The one or two things that the policy looks at in strengthening the schooling system, the is, of course, like a foundational mission on a mission on foundational competencies. But then that's also not a new thing. I mean, that's a continuing of the earlier policy statements and program mechanisms as well. The biggest dropout actually occurs after class 8, when in the transition to class 9 upwards, and then after school, post-school. How can that be? How can those enrollment gaps be reduced and a greater transition efficiency be attained by strengthening the school system? And I think three things in it that I particularly liked. One was, see, and this comes more is from my field work in the States as a education secretary working in the schooling sector and then moving on to higher education, is teacher management policies at the school level tend not to encourage a sense of ownership. And the new policy actually talks of three very significant things there. How do you recruit teachers to schools rather than as a state cadre that is transferable? So it discourages arbitrary teacher transfers. It encourages school ownership of teachers, and it encourages subject-wise teachers. And I think that's very important. It hopes to fill in teacher vacancies. But I think this whole point about recruiting teachers on the basis of their subject specialization is very important. You can't have very strong grounding on science and math and language unless you have subject experts teaching that. So it also looks for professional development and career management of the teacher, the school level. I think these will help with the promotion of quality, equity, and encouraging students to move on. It also looks at flexible systems. Students can accumulate credits and drop in and drop out. So there's flexibility of also in the schooling system, and they get more than one chance. There are a whole range of these interventions that are proposed to reduce student dropouts. I will move to the functional autonomy in higher education issue now, because that's very interestingly discussed in the new education policy. And I am hoping that it's going to provoke a few questions from your side later on, Professor Mana. So we have, well, as other speakers said, it looks to reducing the conflict between different regulatory mechanisms, and to bring it all under the Higher Education Commission of India, HECI, and which itself will have 4 verticals. The first one for regulation, the second one for accreditation, the third one for funding, and the fourth one for setting standards. And there is a lateral link amongst them. This will be the umbrella for mentoring all higher education institutes in the country, private and public. And through a system of graded accreditation, there will be graded autonomy, hopefully within 15 years, or HEI as they're called, will have attained full autonomy. Full autonomy is manifested institutionally in the policy in terms of every institution having a board of governors that is fully autonomous, accountable to the stakeholders, and very transparent in its way of functioning and record keeping. And now this is a bit of there is a hint of legislation which will overtake any prior legislations that are not in tune with the new HECI mandates. So this has to be thought through, because there are some very fine legislations. The IIT Act, for example, the IIST Act, because I did move the cabinet note and went to the parliament with some of the very eminent panelists here right now. So there is a plethora of good legislation that has actually encouraged many institutions right now to attain their levels of excellence right now. So how is that going to sit with the new HECI? That's one question. And because some institutions are far ahead of some others, and everybody is not on the same level. So how will these differences be managed and appraised to allow organic growth to each institution, because that's the meaning of autonomy. 2, how will the board of governors relate to even when they're fully autonomous, relate to HECI? It talks about self-disclosure and use of technology, but there are many unanswered, many questions which have not yet been raised. So that'll have to be thought through also, I think. Probably committee of experts will have to go through these, and a lot of discussion will have to be held on how to, one, handle very varied institutions on these issues, and two, how to manage the relationship between individual institutions and HICI. So these are some things. Who will implement? Well, education is a concurrent list, so states will definitely implement, but it comes up with a range of new mechanisms, especially for the schooling sector in terms of standard setting and academic accreditation. But the one nice thing is that it looks to have a common framework for private and public institutions in terms of normative compliances. So that's going to be interesting, because that means that the government is actually willing to make itself accountable to standards it sets for everybody else as well. I think I'll stop here and I can take questions later.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sharma. Actually, on behalf of the entire pool of alumni, we certainly owe you a big word of gratitude, because you were the one who actually steered the IAST bill to the cabinet, and also took forward the enormous amount of work done by Professor Anandakrishnan's committee with our own Professor Amitav Ghosh and late Professor D.V. Singh. So I think those of the alumni who do not know it should now know that you certainly played a very, very important and key role in that. But you also gave a very nice perspective that instead of answering the questions, the policy should also provoke newer questions so that we actually should explore new possibilities. The Higher Education Council of India, we do not know exactly what would be the shape, but certainly it should promote such new experiments. And continuity or to prevent dropout should be a big challenge. And as you rightly said, that importance of teaching is important, but more important is that the teachers should make learning more easy to follow and more interesting. So thank you again, Mrs. Sharma, and that allows me now to move to the hardcore technology man, steel man, Dr. Dewashish Bhattacharjee, with an excellent exposure to the globe and the global technology evolution, not only because he's both Jadavpur University and University of Cambridge educated, but has been with the Tata Steel ever since. And India very proudly declares that from 100 or 112 million ton in another 5 to 10 years should reach 300 million tons of steel producing country and be one of the foremost, possibly immediately behind China. But Dewashish has seen the difficulties of implementing technology. Even if the knowledge exists, it's not so easy. So Dewashish, to you, our question would be, what reforms did the industries expect from NEP? And are you happy, or you would probably have expected something more? And related to that, we would also like to know from you that how can NEP make India globally more competitive in the technology space? Over to you, Dewashish.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Manna. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me at this forum, and it's a real honor to be sharing I can't say the stage, but the screen with such stalwarts. I feel humbled. So, when I got your invitation, I was thinking more from the NEP perspective going forward, and having listened to Professor Suresh, Dr. Srikumar Banerjee, and Ms. Sharma, and of course the previous inaugural program, I feel I should probably look at this and address this from the other side, the industry side, right? And then work backwards and make it join somewhere in the middle, which is the crux of your topic, higher education, right? So let's see what the industry is looking for, right? And let's see. And part of this was addressed by Dr. Banerjee when he talked about investment readiness level, right? Now, The crux of Atmanirbhar, or taking technology leadership in the globe, is not only about TRL levels, but about implementing technologies, bringing in new products which are sustainable both from on multiple fronts, from environment front as well as the commercial front. Right. So it is about taking ideas which address the nation's needs, be it growth in steel, be it addressing the need for recycling of rare earths, be it addressing water, be it reducing CO2. It's about taking these problems, treating them as through TRL issues, and taking them from ideas at universities, pushing them through pilot scales at probably the CSIR labs, and then inevitably have industry pull the last part for commercialization. The collaboration that Dr. Banerjee was talking about, I would like to extend the gamut of that. It's not just collaboration between universities, it's collaboration across universities, CSIR labs, or labs of that stature which can take ideas to pilot scales, and inevitably industry. And the investment at each of these scales, each of these stages will be different. The university level of investment is relatively less. So you can invest into multiple projects, multiple ideas. Whereas if you look at the industry, if you bring in a new concept and new to the world concept and scale up that technology to the commercial level, that's huge investment. It's in hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, even for a small technology. So you cannot choose everything. You have to be very selective, which brings me to the issue of focus. Therefore, at the national level, where you are taking things forward with focus, you need to have focus. Dr. Banerjee again gave the example of silicon. We fell behind. Even today, as we speak, we are falling behind in multiple things. If you don't act today, there are other countries in the world which will overtake us, flood the world with their products, and make further development unviable. Right? It has happened in photovoltaic. It has almost happened in electronics. It may today next happen in battery materials. So it is important for us to identify what to focus in as a nation and as a group of industries. For example, as a group in this group of steel industry in India, it's matters of national importance which will sustain this industry in the future. One example is CO2. CO2 capture, CO2 sequestration, CO2 use. The West has a solution, or tentative solution. It can capture the CO2, put it under the North Sea, or in a spent oil well or a spent gas well. India can't do that. India doesn't have that option. India has to find its own option, but it still has to find it. And it is an issue which is of national importance. It will be forced down our throat. It's an issue which is of importance to the whole steel sector in India. So as an example of focus. So now if you look at it from the industry perspective and the national education policy, what are we talking about? We are talking about national focus on key issues. We are talking about development of technology for the country, by the country. These solutions will not be available outside. And therefore, it is important to see these focus areas as a string of projects from university through CSIR labs or labs of that nature into industry for commercialization and for implementation. And we can then even take this out like the Europeans and the Japanese bring their technology in. We will be ready in 10, 20 years to take this technology out as an offering to the commercial offering to the rest of the world. What is needed for this? Does the national education policy give us that framework? So I was looking at the key salient points of the national policy, and it's talking about holistic rather than regimented. It is talking about how we think rather than what we think. It is talking about broadening. It is talking about choices of courses rather than straitjacketing. If I look at our engineering education today, It is more about straitjacketing. It is about a metallurgist going in and after 4 years coming out as a, as a class 12 student going into metallurgy department, for example, and coming out as a metallurgist. The industry needs a more holistic engineer, not even for new technologies, even for running the current plants, right? It needs a more holistic engineer. Maybe specialization can come at a later stage of higher education as one progresses. I can probably in this at this occasion of alumnus gathering, I can push the imagination a bit more and suggest the medical system, an example of the medical system where the people coming in to medical come out as MBBS. They're all doctors MBBS. You specialize as a surgeon in a particular discipline after that, right? But you can serve humanity equally as MBBS. We need to have a more holistic education at the engineering level, to be able to choose courses beyond our straitjacketed departments, to have a more multidisciplinary approach. It is not only necessary for today's industry, it is also necessary for developing country and society relevant new technologies, which will make us sustainable in the future. A part of this necessity is also served by educating the educators. Right? The importance of the teachers to speak the languages across the TRL level or across the investment level, whichever parameter you choose, is extremely important. Today, in spite of a lot of goodwill from both sides, good wishes from both sides, the teacher's language and the industry's language are not the same. There's a lack of communication, there's a lack of collaboration thereof. Therefore, I suggest that, as a strengthening of the implementation of NEP to make it more holistic, there be a framework where industry can come to academia. And you're talking about multiple entry-exit points for students. Maybe there can be multiple entry-exit points for teachers. And you're talking about teaching and research coming closer. So I think it is extremely important when you're looking at across TRL level necessities. You have industry people coming into academia at multiple entry points. Academics going into industry at multiple entry points and exit points. I don't know how you're going to structure it, but as a suggestion, as an idea, I think this will be extremely important to enable this collaboration to happen, and the holistic nature of technology development to be rooted in this country. I'll stop here for now, and I hope I've answered your questions and addressed the issue from an industry perspective with some examples. Thank you, Professor Manna.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dewashish. Of course, you did touch upon, you brought in new perspectives, and as you said, from the industry's point of view, and that's exactly what we expected. And I think you certainly made a very important point that the NEP is talking about holistic education. The question, of course, remains that how do we achieve that goal? That's certainly a desirable goal, and how do we achieve that? And you talked about the importance of focus, which of course actually can happen probably at a slightly higher level, but you talked about focus for technology development, not for education. So the recipe that you're proposing is that the education be holistic, and eventually when we talk of technology creation, we should be ready for focus. We should also be ready with the right kind of investment. And you also reinforced what Dr. Banerjee was saying about collaboration, the need for collaboration, and also train the teachers. And that's also another very important. So these days, because of this pandemic, thank you again, Dewashish. And
thank you.
This situation we all actually are trying to figure out, and in the process already about 10 months or 9 months have elapsed. We still are struggling to understand how do we implement education at higher level through digital platform. And we have Dr. Manish Gupta here, who actually is has a huge background in terms of not only in the computer science and technology areas, but he has directly spent a lot of time in developing platform for distance education using digital platform. So, Dr. Gupta, to you, our question would be, can we really implement, or can we really educate students in professional courses? Will we ever go to a doctor who has been totally trained by digital platform? Will we ever ask a civil engineer who has only been educated through digital platform to build my house after my retirement? Can we really instill that level of confidence when we have no other? This is certainly a very a situation which is completely unexpected. So that's why we are struggling to come to terms with it. But we also need to reach out to larger section of the population. And to achieve something like GER of 100% at school level and at least 50% at the tertiary level, there's no other go than to rely more upon the digital platform. So how do you think, how much digital platform can actually replace classroom teaching or laboratory training, particularly for professional education? And how can mathematical skill and scientific training be improved through the new recipe of national education policy? So Dr. Gupta, we are very keenly waiting to hear your perspectives.
Okay, thanks, Professor Manna, for inviting me. So you have started with a very provocative question. Can education through digital platform replace classroom teaching and lab training? And in fact, again, let's go back to pre-COVID times. In fact, I would see a lot of teachers kind of scared by this prospect of digital platforms potentially replacing them, and hence a hesitation to adopt digital platforms. So my view is that teachers who do not use digital platforms, they are going to become obsolete. They will not be as effective as teachers who embrace and utilize digital platforms. Of course, COVID kind of forced some of this to be done, but in a very kind of a haphazard manner where we weren't really prepared for it. And the manner in which kind of we were forced to use these digital platforms, I mean, we are not necessarily using them in the best possible manner. So in my view, what these digital platforms can help is help teachers become much more effective facilitators of learning. So in fact, the national education policy places a lot of emphasis on learning rather than just teaching, because a teacher can see that often they spend so much of their time and energy on the lecturing part and not as much on the other aspects of facilitating learning. And I think that aspect can be very strongly like improved using these digital platforms, because today there are again wonderful online videos, video lectures available on any topic. Any topic you pick, you can find some of the best teachers in the world having kind of created videos describing those topics. So I think teachers should embrace utilizing these kind of online videos to support learning for their students. And what they can use is they can spend the time that gets freed up from their own lecturing to now spend more of the time on supporting the critical other aspects of learning, right? Things like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity. How do you inculcate those? And this is where I think teachers are best positioned to do that, because if they can spend more of the classroom time on things like discussions, which promotes that critical thinking among students, it also helps you develop some of these softer skills, communication skills, and so on, that are going to be very, very important for the students. So things like discussions, things like supporting, spending more time on problem solving, giving out assignments and helping, again, people, students, right, develop, hone their problem solving skills and supporting their creativity. This is where I think digital platforms can free the teachers from spending more time on these very, very critical activities. So that's one aspect. The other aspect that I think is digital platforms can help you with more of supporting assessment in a more continuous manner. Instead of spending more of the emphasis on these exams at the end of the entire semester or the class and so on, can you support more of assessments on an ongoing basis and rely less on just the formal examinations? Another aspect I would say is personalization, because not every learner is the same, and they come with different backgrounds, different rate at which they prefer to learn, different manner in which they like to learn, and so on. So digital platforms, I mean, we've always seen, again, digital technologies helping with personalization of various kinds of services, right? We have enjoyed banking, retail, all of these services, and we have seen so much of personalization that has been facilitated by technology. And I think, again, these digital platforms, in combination with the right teachers, they can facilitate that personalization. If a student is struggling with some material, can you recommend to them, can you more of the material on prerequisites to the concepts that are being covered? Or if a student is getting bored, can you again feed them more and more advanced material? So can you, again, these recommender systems that have been applied for recommending the right kind of maybe products to buy and so on, can they be developed in a more learning aware manner to recommend the right kind of content to the learner? And finally, I feel digital platforms can help support that lifelong learning. I think Dr. Banerjee earlier talked about, again, the huge need for learning to learn. And this is where I think through our formal education, the teachers, first and foremost, need to inculcate in the students a passion to learn and that ability to learn, to become effective learners, so that once they graduate out of these schools and colleges, that's not the end of their learning. As again, another panelist said, that's the beginning of their learning. So they have to, everybody needs to commit to lifelong learning. And this is where, again, I think digital platforms can play a very, very crucial role in supporting that lifelong learning. So let me now come to your second question of mathematical skill and scientific training. How can that be improved through NEP? I will actually not address this question directly, but on the other hand, talk about the other aspect of national education policy that Dr. Suresh emphasized earlier. Its emphasis on multidisciplinarity. And this is where I think what is really, really important for the mathematicians, the engineers, and the scientists of tomorrow to have a much more multidisciplinary education and much more grounding in all of these different facets, not just going deep into the mathematics or the engineering. So for instance, the national education policy is talking about all of these institutions, right, becoming universities down the road, with that emphasis on multidisciplinary education, which I think is the right way to go. Because for instance, I mean, if you look at the area of medicine, healthcare, we all know, I mean, despite all of these advances, it's kind of a broken system all over the world. And there is, again, that clear recognition that technologies like artificial intelligence and so on are going to really help us completely transform how healthcare gets delivered. Now, how do we...
So I'm sorry. Please mute yourself, except Dr. Gupta for the time being, please.
I should be brief. I also...
No, Dr. Gupta, please carry on. I mean, you're touching very important points.
I also realize we are out of time, so I'll be brief. I think so we've had this distinction, right? IITs are providing engineering education, and we have had medical institutions providing education in medicine. We need to break down those barriers. And it's great to see, again, institutions like, for instance, IIT Delhi coming together with AIIMS. It's great to see institutions like IIT Kharagpur, which have also established a school of medicine, right, along with engineering, it is extremely important, right, for us to bring these disciplines together, because this whole, for instance, example of AI plus X degree, where X is that domain, I think that's a great step, because we do need, again, technologists who also have at least good understanding in at least one domain. And they can bring that deeper understanding in that domain to really understand what are the right problems to solve using technology. And the other aspect is that emphasis on humanities, because I think technologists and mathematicians and so on, and scientists of tomorrow, they have to really make sure they really understand human behavior. I mean, they take humanities very seriously, because to the extent that they can combine the science and technology with understanding of human behavior, that is going to lead to far more effective technological solutions in the future than being very, very narrowly focused on technology. So I think with that, let me stop and hand it back to you to listen from the other panelists, as well as hopefully from the audience, people who may have questions for the panelists and comments.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And now, obviously, I mean, with your background of IBM and Xerox and now Google.
81, and he was with IIT Kharagpur. He did his PhD from IIT Delhi, and now he is with IISER. So the key question that we have fielded for Soumitra is how he sees the relationship of NEP 2020 for a erstwhile teaching intensive institute like BE College to the newly transformed IIEST that we aspire to be an institute for higher learning. So Soumitra, I know we talked about that, so please carry on, continue.
Yeah, thank you,
Take
Viman.
charge.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Indranil has been thrown off this meeting. Anyway, the new education policy actually envisages a few different types of institutions. Two major categories are the teaching intensive institutions and the research intensive institutions. And the NEP has come at a time when some of the institutions are on the way from being the first category to the second category. And IIEST is one of them, and there are other NITs, and some institutions are being upgraded from different types of institutions, like the Indian School of Mines, like the BHU, to an IIT. And these institutions so far performed in a specific way. Now they're expected to perform in a different way, and there has to be a very well-planned transition process. And in a panel discussion, it is generally desirable that each panelist brings different perspectives. So I'll bring the perspective of an academic insider. All my life I have taught, and therefore that's all I know. I'll present here. So I'll go to presentation. Probably you can see, right? Viman, can you see?
Yes, Soumitra, we can see your screen. Please continue.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll be basically focusing on orienting a teaching intensive institute to a research institute one, and what I think should be the steps taken. And I'm sure the leadership of these institutions that I just mentioned are taking some of these steps, but still I'll present my perspective. One important thing is that you can wish it. You can wish a changeover. And you have to take into account the history, and all that history is not negative history. There are also lots of positives. For example, as a result of the long period of existence as a teaching institution, the faculty of these institutions have got specialized in the art of teaching. And many of them have not really conducted research at a frontier level, but that this acquired ability to teach is also an asset, and that we have to protect by all means. And so one phenomenon in many of the foreign universities, as well as in the IITs and in our institute like IIST, is that every faculty member is expected to produce research results. And this is often created by sort of an administrative pressure. I feel that such administrative pressure for all faculty to produce research results might be counterproductive, because everybody might not be able to produce that. That will produce frustration and hampering the enthusiasm in teaching. So what is needed is a different approach here, administrative procedure. The institute has to produce a congenial atmosphere and the necessary infrastructure so that those among the faculty who want to research, do research, conduct research at the frontier level, they can do so without any hindrance. Hindrance in the path of doing one's research is a major problem in many academic institutions in India. And that is what the administrator's role is to remove. But there will be some who do not want. They consciously choose to excel in teaching. And they should also find a supportive administration. And I think this is important. Those who excel in neither research nor teaching, should not find any prospect for career advancement. Very difficult to implement because it has a different history, but this is, I think, necessary. The scopes have to be created so that a faculty member can choose, can define on what basis he or she will be evaluated. And one can think of a total workload equalization scheme, which is practiced in many of the foreign universities, where somebody who engages in serious research and evidenced by the funding he or she brings, the research papers he publishes and things like that, as evidenced by that, they might have relatively lesser teaching load than those who declare to excel in teaching. It's not just anybody. Some people will be declaring to excel in teaching. Some people will aspire to excel in research. I'll propose that you make a distinction in terms of the load they carry in teaching. Faculty evaluation and promotion is one of the most important avenues by which, tools by which the administration motivates the faculty. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because ideally, a faculty member should be self-motivated. You don't have to be told to do something. Nobody should have to wield a carrot in front of you in order to make you do something. But the ground reality is that often becomes necessary. When it does, then the evaluation and promotion process should be as objective as possible and as transparent as possible. So that you might have to publicly make it known. That means you have to set the goalpost. And when you set the goalpost, don't move it. Set the goalpost as you'll be evaluated on 4 yardsticks: the research output, excellence in teaching, attracting research funding, and how much institutional responsibilities you have taken. And one has to give a confidence in the faculty members by removing all subjective judgments as much as possible, so that if one performs in these aspects, or at least 3 of them, then career advancement is assured. It should not depend on somebody's favoring somebody or not favoring somebody. That confidence of the faculty in the administration is definitely needed in order to faculty to produce. If the older faculty who have specialized in teaching are not to be expected to excel in research, then how does research flourish? That has to come by recruiting new faculty. Now, here, that means you have to recruit research motivated and talented faculty, not only young, but also somebody at the leadership levels also. And this cannot be done through the usual governmental process of publishing advertisements and waiting for applications. Just waiting with a bowl in hand and expect the faculty members to come in. It doesn't work. You will get mediocre people. Good candidates as in short supply. So what is needed to be done is, in view of this ground reality, one has to proactively identify prospective faculty through such committees and has to reach out to them. This is not done in most Indian institutions, but is common practice in foreign institutions. I know that because I also have been identified as a prospective faculty or by some universities abroad, and so they reached out to me. So I know this is a standard practice, even government institutions. And this should be done. That means you have to reach out to the appropriate faculty. Should not just wait for the appropriate faculty to apply to you. In terms of research infrastructures, there are certain things that goes without saying. There has to be ample space for setting up new labs. The administrative and clerical support for externally funded projects. In most of these institutions that have an older legacy do not have that. As a result, the faculty members who bring externally funded projects have to run after 100 things, even most of the time have to do clerical work themselves, and that burden should be removed, and there has to be a support system for that. Availability of a strong library and access to other resources of research information, and streamlined procedures for allowing faculty members to attend conferences, visit industries to explore possibilities of collaboration, visit funding agencies, etc. This is one weakness of the older institutions, that they have very, I would say, non-streamlined procedures. One often has to be favored in order to get these. Also, the streamlined procedures for availing government fellowships for short-term visits abroad for collaboration, establishing collaboration. There has to be a very well-laid system so that one can, if one qualifies for it, one can really get it. And most importantly, you cannot excel in research unless you have excellent PhD students, because our research is actually done by them. We supply the ideas, but they do the nuts and bolts work. Now, it is therefore necessary to attract quality students. And that, again, cannot be done simply by publishing advertisements and waiting for applications. You have to reach out. And you have to reach out, you have to attract them through a strong outreach program, giving talks in other colleges and universities from where prospective students will come. Attract them, excite them about your own research work or the research work being carried out in your institution. And through summer research programs funded, the institute may fund such summer research programs in which students for those institutions will come from where you expect research students in future to come, and creating undergraduate research opportunities. So I would say that there are various things that are needed to be done in order to make that real, fruitful, and meaningful transition from being a teaching intensive institution to a research intensive institution. But a research intensive institution does not mean teaching in secondary there. This is something that has happened in many of the IITs. I'm sorry to say that. And that is not desirable. And therefore, the faculty members who are excellent in research should also aspire to be excellent in teaching. And I personally feel you cannot really do excellent top quality research unless you get the new inputs from new fresh minds. And that happens through teaching. Thank you. And you have to have good universities, collaboration with good university abroad. I'll stop here and maybe we'll have questions later. Thank you.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, well, I mean, I kind of lost the connection for a while. And when I came back, I realized that Professor Banerjee, being a professor, actually has turned the entire panel discussion into his classroom. And which was, actually, he was taking a tutorial to the administrators, academic administrators, and would-be academic administrators. But I certainly very, very much appreciate, Professor Banerjee, your viewpoints on what to do and how to actually inculcate the sense of merit-based advancement in career, and more importantly, how to promote the culture of competitiveness and innovation, spirit of innovation in engineering education. I sincerely hope that the IIST administration actually takes the benefit of the perspectives that you shared with us. Well, actually, we are, with Professor Banerjee, we have come to the end of the panel, and I happen to see a lot of queries, a lot of very interesting ideas and questions being thrown in the chat box. But when I have my full screen on, I cannot see those questions. So Dr. Ghosh should actually advise me how to proceed. But I must tell you that before we actually end, I would also like to, Mrs. Sharma said that the NEP should also provoke more questions. So I have a few more points to share with the audience here, and not to any panelists. And maybe in future, some of you would also like to think about it. And since we are provoking more new questions and new ideas, perhaps this would be useful in time to come. While we are approaching the midnight, I see a lot of the audience size is swelling. Maybe the ones from the US and similar areas are probably now waking up to join for this interesting discussion. I would just like to say that the whole panel discussion was aimed at trying to understand how do we go about implementing national education policy, particularly in the technological education sphere. And we had wonderful experts from the government think tank, from industry, both hardware as well as software. We had very eminent personalities in the form of Dr. Banerjee and Dr. Suresh, who have seen a lot of technology developments for the country in the past few years. We all had, at the end, we found something very, very cogent and very well-structured presentation by Professor Banerjee in terms of how to actually take the institutions of repute to the next level. Reputation built over a period of time in terms of teaching, all right, but without research, we remain stagnant. As I said, two sides of the same coin of education. So how to make or convert the eminent institutions, teaching institutions, into research and intensive institutions as well. So in this, at this juncture, Dr. Ghosh, am I supposed to say thank you, or would you be able to take questions from the audience?
No, Professor Manna, for sake of time, of course, time flew. We have like 90+ minutes and just went like Zoom. So it's really a very, 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 very well attended panel discussion, and I cannot thank you enough. And also all our panelists. So the questions that came up in our chat box, I'm sure our technical team will collect them, collate them, and as appropriate, they will fill it to you to get insight from our distinguished panelists. So at this point, I'd request you to draw the curtain on this esteemed panelists and panel discussion.
Okay. So then on behalf of the entire pool of alumni who are present today for this interesting event, I would like to extend my warm gratefulness to all the panelists, Dr. Suresh, Dr. Banerjee, Mrs. Sharma, Dr. Dewashish Bhattacharjee, Dr. Manish Gupta, and finally, Professor Soumitra Banerjee, for giving us new lights and their very own and very, very thoughtful perspectives as to how we can move ahead and make the best use of NEP to make India not only self-reliant, but to be counted among the topmost nations in the technological sphere in the world. So thank you very much. And from my side, I would like to now say goodbye and thank you again. Jai Hind.